Welcome to Big Blend Radio's first Friday Toast to the Arts and Parks show with the National Parks Arts Foundation, who are known for their amazing artist residencies in parks across the country. So welcome, everyone. You know it is Women's History Month, and March 8th is Women's History Day, International Women's History Day. So we're a day early because I think that's what we like to do. Right, Tanya? Tanya Ortega, the founder of the National Parks Arts Foundation, is gracing the podcast land here with us here on Big Blend Radio. We do our shows with the National Parks Arts Foundation every first Friday, typically interviewing artists and residents that are part of the National Parks Arts Foundation who creates these amazing residency programs. We're talking a month in outside a national park where artists, when we say artists, we're talking everyone from a writer to a musician, a journalist, a travel writer, a poet, a filmmaker, you name it. Whatever you do in the world of art is considered art. So, anyone can apply, men, women, and we're going to be talking about women on today's show, but anyone can apply for these residencies as an artist. And those who get selected get to spend a month in a residency where you get to focus on creating whatever you want to create in that park unit, from your adventures in the park unit. Now, National Parks Arts Foundation really tells the story of America through their residencies, which is pretty amazing. Artists go there, come back, their art goes around the world, their music is heard around the world. And so if you never get to that actual national park, I encourage you to look up these artist residencies. We're doing a retrospective booklet. We've been talking about that over the last few months, and this will be out in time for National Parks, the National Parks Week. So stay tuned for that. But with Tanya here on the show today and Women's History Day being tomorrow, and it's Women's History Month, we thought, let's talk about women artist residences in the parks through the National Parks Arts Foundation, and also look back at some of the women of the past. So, Tanya, you're the first person we should talk about with this because you created the National Parks Arts Foundation. So you are a woman of the arts in parks and history. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Hello, everybody. It's nice to hear you again. Wow, Lisa, thank you for bringing me up as that. You know how we all forget ourselves when we're counting or anything? I had totally forgotten what we as women and me. Yes, thank you for saying that. And you are also a woman of the park, Lisa. And I bet there are tons, hundreds and thousands of women of the parks that don't even consider themselves that without having somebody else to tell them. Thank you, Lisa. What a great subject.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you too. I'm so glad we're doing this. I know you've been on women's shows, our women's shows over the years, but I do want to tell you this too. So this time last year for our National Parks Arts Foundation podcast, Tanya was actually the guest. We recorded this amazing interview and I was like, dude, that was one of the best. And something technical just decided to wreak havoc on this interview. And I started to fix and edit was next to impossible. And by the time we were done, it was like, here's Tanya going, and yes, And, it just was one of those interviews I had to just say, you know what? I'm going to have a glass of wine and pull the delete button. And I hated it because it was one of those, Nancy and I've been podcasting for 18 years and there's been, I think 4 to 5 podcasts over those 18 years that I had to push the delete button on for various reasons. And it sucks. It sucks.
Oh, but come on. That statistically, that's impossible what you did. 4 or 5 over that length of time.
Yeah. One is because someone was rude and I just I couldn't allow myself to go through editing. Like he said some really intense things against people of different places and stuff. And it's like I could edit that out, or like, honestly, we don't take that kind of stuff on the show. It's negative and nasty and discriminatory, actually.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I ain't editing and I don't think anybody needs to hear it. So that's that. And I think what was the other couple, it's just bad technical stuff or, that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's kind of weird. And so anyway, you went traveling or something the next day and I'm like, oh, what are we doing? This is supposed to air. And Nancy and I, what did we do? We had a glass of wine. And Nancy says, well, it's Women's History Month starts tomorrow with Tanya's interview. It was supposed to be the kickoff. So what did we do? We created a whole podcast channel. It's all Tanya's fault. I re-aired her interview when she talked about her photography and being an amazing photographer that she is, and how she started the National Parks Arts Foundation. And no, we didn't just launch a channel. We said, all right, we're going to do this every day. And we really did. Once a day that entire month of March 2024 aired episodes, and we have a new episode, often a panel discussion every fourth Wednesday. And then we share any kind of women's history, conversations or on that channel. And the whole thing of it is women making history of the past, the present, and the future. And I think that's what NPAF does with women. And we've got this whole playlist of artists in residence through the National Parks Art Foundation. And we've heard so much feedback from these women artists talking about the fact that being a woman artist, especially ones who go off and do these things solo, how much it means to them that they are in a safe place. They can explore and be as wild as they want in that way. And when I say that respectfully to the parks, obviously they're, taking good care, but they feel safe. And some of the residencies, if they need to bring a partner or deal with, even family, Tanya and the National Parks Arts Foundation have been awesome that way. So I think this is all just fitting that we do this show today.
Yes,
Really.
that reminded me what you said of about bringing people reminded me of something, which is we often get emails, and I kind of keep track about who is asking this particular question. And it is very important, I think. We do not pair strangers together in a house. We do not do that. And the reason I bring that up is because I could be missing one, but all of the inquiries, and I ask, our staff, everybody tells me what's going on, and it's mostly women asking that, and we maybe need to make sure that our verbiage is better, but we don't pair strangers in the house with people.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a big thing, because we do want people, whether they're women or not, to feel safe and like they're not being thrown in with anybody. Who knows what that looks like for your artistic process, having other people around you. If that's part of your artistic process, of course you can bring people, but not to all of them, but the ones that we can. And the history of women in the arts. So one thing that is very interesting, and I keep finding this out, is because women, especially writers, had to use a nom de plume. That's kind of coming back. And do you know what that is, Lisa?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A lot of writers do that. A lot of writers, I have a lot of writers who have their own pen name, and they're like, yep, that's that. And I just interviewed as part of our women's history celebrations all month. We interviewed this author, and her name's Lynn, but her nom de plume is Lauren. And I twirled it around and got muddled on the show, right? Of course, I had to mess up, but it's a Lauren and a Lynn, and I'm like, all right, Laura Lynn, that's your new name. But she was good about it. But she was cool because she writes a character that's a killer, a female killer for hire, and she goes around and kills people. Yeah, she goes and does spies and all kinds of. She's like a spy, and yeah. I think once in a while, we need to have some women like that portrayed. Not, they always want us to be goody two shoes, Tanya, and that's just not true in life.
Well,
but
that is true. But for characters like your friend is writing about, and as unfair as this is, I think that women are, how can I put this? A little bit more stealth in specific things about planning and carrying things out just very thoroughly and covering their tracks. That's another sexist thing I'm going to say, but So characters like that she's writing about are really not often talked about because people don't want to see it. Men don't want to see it. It's not pretty. It's not a, you know,
But they run good businesses. It's the same techniques. We were actually talking about that on the show is, women criminals are,
they're good
they
criminals.
they organize. Look at, Ma Barker and stuff, right? They were the organizers. Catherine Kelly and Machine Gun Kelly. Catherine Kelly was the epitome of running everything. In fact, I think she ran Ma Barker, at one point.
I'm
And
sure.
so you've got
Yeah.
these women outlaws, but they were so smart. And if they just did it in the legal fashion, they'd be running Google or something. But it, they're like exactly what you're saying. Think ahead, meticulous, and all these
Planning. Yeah.
planning, all of that. And you're right about the nom de plume because the lady who has this killer woman, she's in like psychology. so, so anyway, so she has to keep her name quiet. So I'm just saying,
No,
and
definitely. And that's
she
why
hears a lot of things. So, the
you
next
got
time you
it.
sit on the couch, just know someone's writing about you.
Well, I think that I might have told you this before, but I do different genres of art under different names, though that's not the only split. And I have used male names
Mm.
before as my nom de plume, but I actually, in different things except for writing, I like to say nom de guerre, which, means loosely translated name of war, because it is kind of a war when you have to be up against a whole lot of people as a writer or anything. And if you are a woman, especially in the old days, you couldn't be a woman writer. So you'd have to come up with a guy's name who would be
Mm.
attractive to those small publishers, even, and it's still happening, by the way. So, um,
Yeah.
it's a shame. It's a shame that we have to do that. But
Do you
so
think Shakespeare's wife was a writer? I think she did something in that. And I think there was something between Shakespeare and his wife when you think
there's
back.
there's a
Hmm.
lot of in fact, one of the women who's a very dear friend of mine is like the leading Shakespeare expert in the United States.
Oh,
I'll
bring her
ask
on
her.
the show, please. Yeah. I just thought there was something about there. Oh, I think I got it. No, it's not her. You know who it was? It was Fremont. You know who traveled the country with Kit Carson?
Oh, yes.
So he
Yes.
wrote so he was hired, right, to, map stars, and Kit Carson basically taught him how to do everything. Anyway, sorry, but Kit Carson was
No,
cool.
it's true.
But Fremont has like some shady things going on, and it's very interesting. His marriage, his wife, they say his wife, so she comes from a family of money, and he was a ruffian going around outside. I'm going to go do this and that, and explore, which is cool. And his marriage with her, it's said that he hated doing the reports. He did all the hard work and stuff, but when it came to doing the reports, he sucked. So that's not how they put it in the documentary, by the way, but she wrote his journals and they were storytelling. Like she was storytelling when she wrote it.
Oh,
So yeah, sorry, forget Shakespeare. It was Fremont. But a lot of women were doing that back in the day and hiding, like you said. Zelda Fitzgerald, look at Zelda and F. Scott
yeah.
Fitzgerald, those two. But she did get her stuff out. But I think, I think things ended up in each other's work, like, Lennon and McCartney. I'm just thinking
No,
at
no, it's
times.
true. I have friends in Hollywood right now who were either married or are married or a partner with their male or masculine counterpart. And there are so many women writers in Hollywood that do not get their, and other industries too, but I have experienced in Hollywood that women are doing the writing
Mm,
and the man is the one usually that can relate to the other guys and is charming and is like the face of those partnerships. But the women are the ones, and this is a tough one too. They also, some of them have kids like in school, so they're having to do all of that work and Hollywood studio writing.
wow.
So
Wow.
it hasn't ended. So this is why we are here today to celebrate. But I just
Women.
throw in the ones that, whether by choice or being forced to having to go under a different name, you are still you, and we are proud of you.
That's awesome. I love that part. I wanted, going in the women of the past, present, and future, since you started this podcast. Now, you got two podcasts with us now. You just didn't know it. But the women of the past, present, and future, I wanted to, the national parks and state parks. And, there's so many parks that have Friends of Parks that are run by women too.
Oh,
And
yeah.
the Friends of Parks are always doing something with the arts in there. They have author readings. They have so many different things, right? Art shows, galas, all, the arts are involved. I don't care what park we talk about across this country, whether it's county, state, urban, national, wildlife refuge. I know a woman has their hand somewhere in there doing something.
Yes,
So it's
definitely.
impossible to cover them all and even know about them all. But on our tour, our Love Your Parks tour, Nancy and I came across some in the past. And just to give a shout out, and then I really want to go into some of the women that became National Parks Arts Foundation artists in residence, who will all be featured in the special National Parks Arts Foundation Artists in Parks retrospective of over 8 years of interviews with artists in residence that we've done, and also information about the parks. So if you plan to go to them, you've got that. And also you can link over to travel writers' articles and interviews and all kinds of cool stuff. But I wanted to start with Helen Hunt Jackson. And many of you may know about her from the play Ramona. That, especially if you lived in California. We actually lived in a mountain town called Julian, and just down the hill, the town was Ramona. Hello, named after this play. And they still honor and cherish that play. She was an abolitionist. She stood up for Native Americans. Helen Hunt Jackson is amazing. And she did a lot. We went to a park called North Cheyenne Canyon Park outside Colorado Springs. She has her own waterfall. It's a little one, Helen Hunt
Oh, that's so
Falls.
cool.
And she was buried near there. She loved Colorado. And I think when you go to Colorado, something does happen to you. The soil, I don't know.
Oh,
There's something
Colorado.
about women in
Yeah.
Colorado. It's hardcore.
Did you
But
say women in Colorado?
women in Colorado, it's a hardcore thing, man.
Oh,
They dry farmed. They started ranches. There were a lot of solo women. It was the Wild West, and these women, they'll get you with a shotgun. We were talking about this on another show today. Don't mess with Colorado women. Mm-mm.
do
And
not.
Helen
They
Hunt
are.
Jackson, yeah, you've been through Colorado a lot too, huh?
Well, the reason that I'm sounding a little bit invested in this is because on my mother's side, those were the women. They were Colorado women, and their husbands were miners for the most part.
Hmm.
And not only that, my great-great-grandmother, actually, I think, I can't remember, was born at the Diamond Bell in Durango when it was a brothel. Just saying.
Ooh, ooh, Durango's
Was
awesome. Yeah, I
not
love Durango.
easy in Colorado for a long, long time for women. And so, you do what you can and you help. And to this day, my mom still insists that we eat sardines from the tins because that's what the wives and husbands would eat when the wives brought the food, the lunches to the miners in the mines up there. And
Wow.
and near Crestone. So my family settled in the valley that Crestone is in, the San Luis Valley. Most of them, but they were also teachers. Women do a lot.
They do. They do. I mean, that's what I think is so great about going to the parks. You get all this women history. Another one, Faye Fuller was the first woman to climb Mount Rainier. She was a teacher and
Faye
she was really
Fuller.
young. She reached it on August 10th, 1890.
Wow.
And I mean, and then she quit teaching and became a founding member of the Washington Alpine Club, the Tacoma Alpine Club, as well as the Portland-based Mazamis Mountaineering Club. I can say it, mountaineering. And she became the first female reporter for the Tacoma Ledger and wrote the column Mountain Murmurs that covered local mountaineering events and climbing stories. I mean, that's pretty
Wow. I
intense.
didn't know she had an article. I didn't know she looked that. I need to look that up. I've got one of those subscriptions. You can look up all that stuff. That's cool.
Yeah, no, and then Susan Thu Parks, also known as Susan Priscilla Parks. We love Priscilla because, by the way, today, March 7th, is National Sock Monkey Day. And we have a pink sock
Mm.
monkey called Priscilla, who is our Love Your Parks tour mascot. So shout out to Priscilla. She's a female. She's a
Shout
girl.
out.
She's got many park ranger, junior ranger park badges. And her first park badge was in Sequoia National Park, given to her by our friend Dana Durns, who's used to work at the Park Service. She's in forestry. Her and her husband have, it's like forest parks, all of it. And she introduced us to this lady, Susan Priscilla Thu Parks, who was born in Caledonia, Ohio, not Caledonia, Scotland, in April 1878. But she lived out in the Sequoia area, and she went out on horseback herself as a
Oh, that's
photographer
right.
and journalist, and she married a botanist to the parks dude as a botanist, and they would go and collect species and specimens of all these herbaceous plants, and they're still being used today for science purposes. Amazing. But she went out on her own in the summers on her horse and went all through the sequoias and helped through her photography and documentation implement a plan to extend and expand what is Sequoia National Park today, which is mostly
She
this
did it.
wilderness area to protect it. John Muir got on board. Not just John Muir. It was John R. White, but also Adam Ansel. Ansel
Oh,
Adams. There we go.
yeah.
I got them
Yeah.
all twirled around. They she influenced him as well about how to use photography to expand and promote and save parks. So I just want to give her a shout out because well, it was here like Ansel Adams, John Muir, but there were some women in there too that were
There
part
were
of those
very
eras.
important women. And look at her. She was doing the writing of the article. She was out there on
She
horseback.
created a gazetteer, is what they were called, like a little like
That's here. Yes. Yes. Oh
small
my gosh.
magazine newspaper about this going, hello, kind of amazing. It's kind of like the abolitionist women who wrote things like you were talking about under a nom de plume. Like, here's my pen name. And they wrote articles, you
And
know?
the only way to get it out into the world was to have a guy's name, even if you were really well connected. But moving back to her, like, can you imagine? And I'm not suggesting anybody do this, but they can, I guess. But for me, hearing that story again, it makes me want to go get on a horse and repeat
Oh,
her entire like trail, like where she
mhm.
went, what she found, and where. Boy, that would be something. Yes, it would take years, but it's just
Well,
so,
the Sierras, are insane, right? The John Muir
oh,
Trail and all of that. I
yeah.
mean, you can get hurt. Our friend Linda Ballou, she's a travel writer and has a podcast with us. She wrote a book, Embrace of the Wild, about Isabella Bird. And Isabella Bird was one of our first women travel writers, right? And she was
Mhm.
in a lot of pain. She, I think, went from England to the Sandwich Islands. She spent a lot of time in Hawaii, where you are. And then on horseback, she learned how to horse ride in Hawaii, which helped all this pain. She had all this back surgery stuff happen, and ended up being like the mama or the grandmother of Rocky Mountain National Park.
Yep.
I can't tell the story like Linda Blue because she wrote a whole book on it, but on her and she fictionalized it and gave a little steamy romance in there with Rocky Mountain Jim. Just saying. Um, but this
Well,
woman went off medication and she did that. And Linda did a lot of trying to retrace her footsteps through the Rocky Mountains where she rode horses and, and she was like, I was in car most of the time. And Linda is an equestrian, but she was like, man, that is insane what she rode through back in the day.
I I can imagine cowboys, the name for them are Palihiolo. I'm sorry, it's not Palihiolo. I can't remember the name for cowboys right now. But if she learned to ride here, she definitely got taught how to ride Western, not
Yes,
English, which is
that
when
was a
you're
big
going.
deal.
Yeah, that is a very important. That is the only way that you could ride how she would be able to with her equipment and stuff. So, she learned in the right place. If she wasn't in
Yeah,
the
and that well, she
Southwest
got out of her
somewhere,
pain.
yeah.
Her pain went like subsided by riding that way, and she felt free. Whereas she'd been in the hospital for so long, and they drugged her up and everything, and then she just felt so free, and that changed her whole life.
Wow,
Amazing. I mean,
that
so
is
there's so
cool.
many women, but I think this. I'm going to just say you've got this era of national parks artist residents that are women in the parks that are, when and everyone this retrospective when you see it, it's going to blow your mind. We've got some of the most iconic places like Dry Tortugas National Park, where you're on your own island for a month,
Yep, you
really,
have
and you
your own
you have to go
island.
through FEMA training, right?
Yep.
And get on a boat, bring all your supplies for a month, and no, there'll be no Facebooking because that ain't there. It's you're solar powered, and that's that, right? It's pretty.
Even the people who have brought satellite phones, which you can bring, they thought they would need them, and they hardly even used them, which is
mm,
my understanding. Maybe they use them more than that, but yeah, yeah,
wow.
women at the park. I mean, and at Dry Tortugas, we had a mother-daughter team there
Yes,
by
yes, you
themselves.
did.
Yeah.
That to me was amazing. Like, here's this mother daughter. Nancy and I are like, wow, another mother daughter duo like us, but they're on an island on their own for an entire month and both painting. So that's really interesting too. They, this is Beth and Haley Williams, everyone. Um, that's incredible. And I think one of them lived in South Carolina. So they're used to this kind of the Eastern Coast, but this is a whole other thing. So, and the work that they produced was amazing. Thinking of Dry Tortugas, I think one of the first artists in residence, and we've done some reunion shows. I think one of the first ones that we interviewed, we've got, we've got Alice Lease, of course. Now, Alice Lease, like
Oh,
she's
she's
a woman
amazing.
icon of the parks. And I want to get to the other women, but Alice Lease has done Hawaii volcanoes twice, Fort Union, Dry Tortugas. Is it?
I think Big Bend. I can't remember how many places she's been, but it has been a lot.
And she connected with one of the women. I remember in the interview that she connected with one of the women that were like she found a journal or something in the library of Fort Union National Monument up in northern
Oh, that's
New Mexico,
right.
and she got all connected in following like this woman's story. You know,
Oh, that's so cool. I love
yeah.
the archives. I love going through those archives.
And she went to Dry Torture. I mean, she's a rancher, man, and she's one of the most amazing painters on the planet. Incredible work. Julie and Matthew Chase Daniel, I think, were one of the first that we talked about. Dry Tortugas. Julie's the wife, and she's an artist. You've got some couples, and that was part of the thing that made people really happy that they were able to do that. Dry Tortugas too. Looking back,
Anna
Denisa.
Glenn. Anna Glenn was there. Oh, who did you say?
Anna, I was saying Denisa Chan. I hope I said it right.
Yep.
Denisa. I always made it.
Denisa.
No matter what, I always mess up. She's going to get mad at me, but she's so sweet. She won't.
She really is such a creative. I'm just so
Everything,
impressed.
plays, photography. I mean, it doesn't end with her.
So,
Movies.
had so many wonderful women artists. And, even if you're not working with us and you are inspired by the parks, like you're a park artist. I don't want people to be selling themselves short because they're not, working with
Hmm.
us or something. Like, please give yourself kudos because it is not easy. And thank you for bringing the parks out of the parks, which is what we do. One of the
Mm.
things that we do. And thanks to a lot of women artists. By the way, I'm just going to throw this in there so that people know. When NPAF was founded, when we became a nonprofit, finally, and that was about 13 years ago, I think, 12, 13 years ago. It was all women, and we made a concerted effort to include men because we realized that we were not
Mm-hmm.
being fair, and we were keeping people out that we didn't mean to. We did not
Mm-hmm.
mean to do it. We just looked at ourselves one day and said, why are there no men here? That's not cool. So
Yeah.
we switched that right away.
Well, it's important because they're all connected. We're all connected, right? As humans. Nancy and I, doing the women's podcast, Women Making History podcast, we have a lot of men on there talking about women and, and women in history in the present. But, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, you're two women. Why don't you just do all women? And Nancy was always like, no, then we're cutting off the conversation. We're
Yeah,
limiting, we're,
yeah,
we're, we're limiting the ripple effect, right? In art, it's supposed to connect with everyone. So it's important to all rise together, as we want to say, right? As we all learn and grow and be entertained and enlightened and inspired, the more we're all feeling those good vibes, the better, man. We got to levitate, Tanya. That's how a musician, I know a drummer that I used to play with, he's like, Lisa, it's all about levitation. Everyone's got to feel good. Men, women, anyone
all of
else,
them, everybody. So
everybody, and inclusivity, Um, you've
I
also had a
gotta
lot of go ahead.
I just want to tell you a quick story. I was down at Carlsbad Caverns, and this is like 20 years ago or something like that. And I was doing park art, and this has happened a couple times. Once with an alias, I was using a nom de guerre for drawing, and then this happened, the same basic thing. A filmmaker got a hold of me, an independent filmmaker, and said, "We saw your work at this and that place, and we understand you're doing the parks, you're doing art of the national parks." And I said, "Yes, I am." And then the conversation got a little bit further, and she said, "Your voice sounds feminine." And I said, "Oh, okay, yeah, well." So anyway, this whole thing, she was doing a film about artists doing art in the park. And then when I told her I was a female, she said, "You are not sellable. I'm not going to include you in this." And I couldn't disagree. I think I've told you about the other instance, but the same thing happened with our, and I couldn't disagree with her. Her film would have been less sellable had a woman been in it. So, this is not a great story, and maybe you want to edit it out, but it happens to be true, all of this stuff. So
Mm,
women in the parks, so important. Let's get it out
I
there.
agree. No, no. Why would we ever cut that out? We need to embrace this because this is the other thing. I think when we look at all the travel writers now, Nancy and I interview travel writers every single week, multiple, right? Shout out to the International Food Wine Travel Writers Association. We work with on that. Like, it's like
Yeah,
what you do with NPAF. I mean, you guys all need to unite. I'm just saying,
I know.
but these women travel writers back in the day, it was men doing the travel, not the women travel writing.
How
You know,
dare women leave the house to travel? Fun.
Yeah, it was like, oh, you're traveling, but it's for your, prestigious little summer house over here.
It's
But
to buy a
there's a
hat.
lot of women who've traveled and indigenous women and black women who've traveled out of this country around the world throughout the last century that people don't realize. And it's always quiet, and so I think women have been doing a lot of this all along, like the Priscilla Thew,
Oh
Susan
yeah.
Priscilla Thew, but it's not glorified, right? So, and now we are numbers and an artist now, women even taking time to be an artist, that's a whole other thing too. So artist residencies, I think it's an era thing too, because a lot of times, it's about women having to stay home with their kids and, that kind of thing. And it's like, oh, your art is frivolous versus a necessity, right? Does that make sense? And
it
old way of
totally
thinking.
it totally makes sense, which is I think in a large part, why women did the auxiliary things with different groups, usually including art. And I believe that is why, with a lot of conservancies and different entities that support the parks and arts, it is mostly women, in my lived experience still,
Hmm.
because when we couldn't go out of the house or people didn't want us to and they didn't want to know we were out of the house, that was the only out, was to, be involved in the ladies auxiliary or something like that. So that made it official enough for us to experience nature. Um,
Mm. And now you look at, someone like Belle Valeros coming over. She flew
yeah,
in to this country. Where did didn't she come from Brazil?
yep,
Argentina or Brazil? I gotta go and
Brazil.
see. Was it Brazil? All the way to America to be an artist in residence. I think that's amazing, don't you? Yeah,
Yes,
Brazil. It is Brazil.
totally.
Yeah.
Totally amazing. And Belle was really good because she could see the similarities between where she had come from and grown up and those, I hate to say the word ruins, but those historic places, and how the similarities and the differences from the ones that were north of Brazil, which is where she was in New Mexico.
Mm.
So, yeah,
Oh,
it's,
another traveling artist, because you talk about Anna Glenn too, right?
yeah.
For Dry Tortugas. You've also got Itsuko Ishikawa. Remember her?
Oh,
And
yeah, that's
yeah,
right.
she was in Hawaii volcanoes. I mean, it's just I mean, when you look at, and then there's this connection with Tucson, Arizona. You now finally have an artist residency in Tucson, which we're excited about. That's our hometown, right? Where our storage unit is for Nancy and I. But you have one that's the Saguaro National Park. So what's great about this is you basically secure lodging for these artists as close as you can to the park. And Saguaro National Park is two sides of the city. One is on the
Yep.
east end, one's on the west side. So you got like a place in the middle, and it's all been women so far. But you have had two artists in residence come from Tucson too that we've interviewed. Laura Ruggles, she's amazing, an amazing singer-songwriter, and has done so much for independent artists just in her work in Tucson. But then you also had a poet that came through, that was, and I think she went to Gettysburg, Julie Swarstadt Johnson, and she went to
Oh,
the
she was
Gettysburg
so
residence.
wonderful. She's
Right.
wonderful. Yes.
And then Kochi. What about Kochi? I'm not, I hope I'm saying her name right. Cochito. Uh-oh, I'm sorry. Julissa Bermejo, the poet, did,
Yes.
she did Gettysburg, but she also wrote about what was going on south Tucson area towards the border of Mexico and what was going on between there. So you've got a
By
good
the way,
connection to
she just put
Tucson.
out another book. So everybody look her up. She just put out another book.
Cochito. I got it right. I got it. I got it. Oh, well, that's amazing. We need to
Yeah.
follow up with her. So
I
this is interesting about your connections with there. And then, speaking of that, also, we had, Chelsea on the show recently, Chelsea Bighorn, artist, that is based in Arizona, but went to
oh,
Saguaro, right?
did so
And
this isn't public information yet, but I'll tell you all. She got selected to be in the permanent collection of the U.S. Department of Interior Museum. So that is
wow.
huge, and that is very exciting, for her. So that's going to be there. So yes, we are making sure that if we have time, and we usually do, we want our artists to really just excel. And this is a very exciting thing, is we work with national museums. I don't just mean government museums, other museums too, and galleries, but it was just so beautiful. And Chelsea is such a good artist, and she's so into her work, like it is in her heart. And so we just love it when we are able to connect artists with these museums. Yeah,
It's awesome. It's
yeah.
awesome. And also, we also had Carissa, Lucky Garcia come on with her.
Lucky
And Carissa,
Garcia, she's
I
so
mean, for her
good.
and her name, Lucky, I mean, she is the energy. Like, I think you'd know she's going to walk into the room before the door even opened. Like, she's coming in. Like, she's got an energy and
Yeah.
it's electric. It's a good energy. It's an intense energy and very authentic, real. Like if she's talking to you, she's talking to you. Like she's not,
Totally.
and her poetry and I don't know. I loved interviewing her. We got to talk to her twice and, she went to Chaco and that's a deep experience for her. It goes and it runs in her family lines. And, that was a big deal. She's, a retired, veteran of war and, man, she
She's
stands up.
amazing, and I really I don't know what to say of what I know about her story in Chaco, but it is so deep and it's hers, and I
Yeah.
think she's going to be, she has expressed it in poetry, and I have to tell you guys that when I first saw her work, I cried. Like I cried because it was so deep and meaningful
Hmm.
to me. And I am like one of these, I know this is a Gen X thing. It was like we were told not to cry, which is true, but man, so for her work to break through to me like that was beautiful. But I had to reflect on, and her words are so the it's so hard to make things simple in a beautiful way, and she did it. Like she pares down to make sure that we can all understand what she is saying and in such a poetic way. Anyway, Google her. She's great.
Yeah, no, I agree. No, I agree. I agree. Speaking of poets, you've done a lot of poetry residencies, especially through Gettysburg area. And you had Lisa Samia that was accepted, but also COVID and all kinds of things happened. But you've
Oh,
also
yeah.
had journalists. Oh my gosh. So writers, poets, I'm just looking at this list and ladies, please, we're not, it's hard to get everybody in on all of this on this podcast. Zoe Schlangler, remember her? Zoe,
Yes,
she's a journalist
totally.
and, she was in Hawaii, amazing writer too, but she wrote a lot about plant biology and stuff that was pretty darn cool. I thought
She
what
was
she was up to.
very cool. And Emma Stibbin, we can't forget Emma Stibbin from Brighton. So, you know that we're able to accept international artists too. And so we are able to have that voice also, which is pretty cool. And Emma Stibbin, but you saw the galleries she's in. I think she's even in the Tate now. I can't remember, but her work is beautiful and she's a wonderful person.
Oh, and okay, so what about Sarah Whedon, man? She's an amazing photographer. And we covered
Yeah.
her when she was in Death Valley.
Yeah.
But she's done a few residencies and she's done a lot of work to show the beauty and then also like what needs to be changed. I think she stands up, you know,
Yeah. She really does.
very, she stands up and I appreciate that. And then Danya, remember Danya or Donja? And I'm
Oh
going to get in trouble.
yeah. Yeah, she went
Burris,
to
and she went
new
to
school.
Chaco, and man, she played with shadows, with like, here, I'm going to put this dinosaur thing here, not the real dinosaur, obviously, and then create the shadow. And it was like this is what it was like when they were there, like it was just through the shadow work of what she did. It was interesting, completely different, which is
I
awesome.
mean, that creativity that she has is is amazing. I mean, I think I'm a creative person, and when I see somebody like that, I'm like, oh, my
Oh,
my minuscule 3 projects isn't going to compare to that type of creativity genius.
and oh, let's talk about genius. Someone who is just moving forward in her career is in astounding ways. Shishwan Yang, incredible musician, string
Oh,
musician,
yes.
and what a life she's been through. She did a residency in Hawaii Volcanoes National Park, and I think we interviewed her right before she went home, got home, went through a very life-threatening car crash. She came back on the show and she released an album and it was all going on. And, she was sitting in, I mean, it's amazing she's alive. This is no
It's
joke.
amazing. Yeah.
I mean, when she talked about it on the show, it's like, I'm like, I don't even believe we're talking. Um,
They
and
thought
the
that she
trauma.
wasn't going to play anymore. She is lucky to be alive. And can you believe that she was on her instruments as soon as she could be? Like,
Yeah.
everybody at the park is also always asking how she's doing. And by the way, Lisa, she has been back and she has given to the community, not just the park, like you wouldn't believe. I mean, she is such a giving person. And I have to tell you that she and Sean McLeod of the New York Dance Institute
Hmm.
and Education got together and did a project. And we are going to do the second iteration of a campaign about her and Sean coming together. So this might sound kind of strange to the audience, but some of our artists, before artists come, we let them talk to other artists who have had the experience, if they're open to it, if they want to. And oftentimes, artists will contact other artists, and you've mentioned this before, and they will do collaborations. So I didn't even know they were doing this. NPAF didn't know at all they were doing this collaboration, and it was a surprise. Isn't that a cool
Isn't
surprise?
it
She
is
showed
so
so cool.
awesome. It is
Yeah.
so awesome. We've seen that. And that's interesting because I go back to, one of the beginning articles too, Danielle Reddick and Giuseppe Quinn from
Oh,
Santa Fe.
yeah. Yeah.
They were in Chaco. I'm looking at all these names and Michelle Schwengel Regala. Did I get her name right this time? I mean, she's from the Antarctic artist group too, man. I mean, it's amazing. She's an
Oh,
amazing fiber artist.
there was a wonderful painter too who, oh, I can't remember her
Oh,
name.
we've got Patricia Cummins, amazing painter. We also Dawn Waters. Oh my gosh,
Oh,
dude,
Dawn Waters is
is
just
amazing.
will blow your mind. Everybody Google her too because her career has,
Yeah.
wow.
I
Wow.
remember Patricia Cummins calling me. There's pronghorn outside at Fort Union. She just got there from Florida. She's like, there's pronghorn, and it's amazing to see the different art forms. And um, now, what about Prince Billy? His wife was doing like textile art while he was
Oh,
there, right? He was writing,
beautiful.
and she
Beautiful.
was
Yeah.
doing
Bonnie Prince
ama-
Billy's wife,
Bonnie Prince Billy. There we go.
Hanson.
Yeah.
I want to say Erica Hansen, which is another one of our artists, but I don't, and I hate saying our artist too, but I can't remember. Oh, what was her first
Oh,
name?
oh no, we'll get there. Yeah,
Google it.
but because some of this is what's so cool is that, you allow these couples to come in and that really does make it happen. So I think that's cool. And from what we've heard, people really like that can
Well,
happen
something
because
interesting happened when they were here. I don't know if you remember, but the government shut down.
yes,
The
yes.
government shut down. And let me tell you how cool the Park Service is. I can't go into details. Let me just tell you that they are so cool. Um, but we made sure that their experience, NPAF made sure that their experience was not was not canceled or delayed or anything like that. So that's another that I know that we're off subject, but when the government closes and for any reason whatsoever, even no reason, the our residencies can be shut down. We have never, ever canceled a residency. National Parks Arts Foundation or the events that are attached to it. Yes, we delayed for years. In fact, I've been working with one artist since 2019, and we've been
Mm,
trying to figure out his schedule because he got canceled during COVID. Not canceled, delayed. And so he
yeah.
might come this year. And how many years is that? 6 years later. But anyway, I'm going off course here. I just wanted everybody to know that we do what we can, no matter, even if the government can't do it, we will try our darndest, and we have a pretty great record. And also these, even though it's under the auspices of the National Park Service or the Department of Interior, if it's with BLM and any other smaller parks, even if you're in a small park, we still consider you just as much as a big park. So,
Exactly. That's
yeah.
the beauty of it because yeah, every park matters. It really does. Every
Exactly.
park matters. And when the artists go in, they find these stories that we don't find when we're just there on a day outing, you know. They get into the archives. They have rangers to help them. They come in from perspectives that I'm just like, wow, I never thought about that, you know.
Oh, I love that.
What, and the fact is that you're open to all these, different mediums of art. One was fiber artist Nancy Hirschberger went to Fort Union and she does quilt painting and she's painting on quilts and import. I mean, it's like this whole other art form I didn't even know existed. And that's
Oh,
a huge thing,
I have,
when we talk about it. Yeah.
I have to tell you, I was really judgy in a bad way about quilt making. And so I, took myself off of the selection committee because I didn't feel like I could be fair. Which I think is important for all of us that are looking at anybody
Mm,
else's things to get people who actually know about it to that have the merit, So I had to step aside for that one. And since Deneen Peterson, who was at Fort Union many years ago, like a decade
hmm
ago or something, she helped me understand the intricacies and the creativity of quilting. And so my brain is as if I were 7 years old and learning something new again. And it is so exciting to me to know that I was wrong and just judgy about something I shouldn't have been. And to get all of this insight. Oh yeah, the quilters we've had are amazing, and I know that he's not a woman, but Stephen Towns, also a quilter, and so even these. So let's take this into the media for which women are more known or less known for. Quilting is a medium that I would say women are more known for than men, and men are now showing up on the scene, and it's a really good collaboration and coming together of those ideas.
mm.
Anyway, um,
Yeah.
yes,
I,
if
I think it's all these different genres, let it be, man.
yeah,
Quilts are a history. Quilts tell stories. There's barn quilt tours all over the country where they put quilts on the barn and people follow trails and then they get to learn about the family farm, you
oh
know?
yeah, there's secrets in those quilts. There's
There
like
are.
stories in those quilts that you wouldn't even know if you weren't
hmm
alive 200 years ago and didn't know the signals for it. It's amazing. It's true.
There's wedding quilts, there's anniversary quilts, there's engagement quilts, there's I'm gonna kill you quilts. There's
Totally.
quilt history in the Underground Railroad, I believe.
There
That
are. There
you know,
really are.
there's so much, and you know who has one of the best quilt collections in the world? I'm just
Who?
gonna tell you, Ken Burns. But I'm gonna move on now. But he does. He has one of the best quilt collections on the planet. But Speaking more on these different genres, Rachel Marie Kimber came on the show, and she's an amazing musician, singer, songwriter, cello player,
Very prolific.
and she connected with the Crickets during her residency. And I had a bug guy on our show, like a for real bug guy, who teaches
Yeah.
entomologist, yeah, and he is the bug dude of this country. And I asked him about her cricket experience on another show, and I had a message her. I said, by the way, I talked about your crickets. And then he had a whole explanation. It's pretty cool. And how crickets' heartbeats change and they chirp according to what they're doing. So if they're ready to mate, basically, she was going to, yeah, they were happy. She met some crickets in Saguaro, but also bats. She was playing her cello to the bats
I
in
have to tell
Tucson.
you something that is interesting. Okay, so as artists, we go to the parks and we're like all of a sudden inspired by stuff. And a lot of time we don't even know what we're going to be inspired by. That's how inspiration works. It's often how
Hmm.
art works too. So often we will have artists come into the parks and they will find beauty in something that is an invasive species.
Mm. Yeah.
So
Hmm.
there is this argument, you should not argument in a bad way, but when I work with the government and we're pitching an artist or whatever, we have to explain a little bit about how you can even be inspired by things that endemic or not. The park's like, we don't want whatever it is. Let's just say Coqui frogs. We don't want an opera about Coqui frogs. And then I have to be like, it is the artists that's inspired. We're not going to direct that because that makes bad art. So
Mm.
they've been really kind about it. They have been really, really kind about it because artists, well, it's just who we are. We find beauty or if not beauty, intrigue in something that we feel needs to get out there. And by the way, when that has happened at parks, the artists have understood that and have included that in the like the brochures or whatever they're printing out. Like this is a bad species because of this. They don't have to do this. They had just have done it. But I am bringing beauty of this thing out in this way. So
Yeah.
it works out, but
That's,
it takes a lot of explaining.
I know it does. I mean, when you think about everyone we've interviewed is pretty much detoured from what their original intent was, because once you get there, it changes, and I love that they all appreciate that NPIF understands that an artist is going to find inspiration and go, wow, wow, this is even bigger and better, that happens to them. And then keeping with, this mixed genre, of course, you have painters like Diana Miller, who's actually volunteers at Hawaii Volcanoes National Park.
Oh, she's such
She
a good
loves,
painter.
and she really gets the native species and understanding the birds and the different berries that the birds eat and all of that I think is also super important. And Mary Babcock also. Isn't Mary also in Hawaii? I think she was also in Hawaii.
Yes, she is
Um,
here in Hawaii, and I believe that she is still a professor at University of Hawaii. I can't be sure though. I could be getting that
I
entirely
know
wrong.
she was on a sabbatical when we talked.
That's
She was
right.
getting on a sabbatical. And then we've had also a poet musician, Queen Esther, on the show. I'm looking at all the Melissa Weinman. Oh my gosh, remember
That's who I
Melissa?
was trying to remember. Melissa.
Yes,
Uh,
Melissa Weinman. Oh my
Wonderful.
gosh. Yeah. I mean, this is amazing what looking at all these different artists that you've had. And, I think she was way back when she was at least 5 years ago that we interviewed her.
Yeah, I think it was about five years ago or so. And I
She's an
apologize.
amazing painter. Oh my gosh, everyone,
Such
you
a
should go
good
to her
painter.
website, melissaweinman.com. Go look at her art. The
I
lighting that she has is
If I'm not
incredible.
mistaken, the exhibitions that she's had in galleries in Santa Fe and all these other Dallas, maybe I can't remember, but she sells like sold out shows, if I'm remembering correctly. So yeah,
Mm.
check her out. You know about
Oh,
her, but the audience might not.
yeah. And Alison Lealoha Milham. I remember her. She's a wonderful musician and an artist, and she also went to Hawaii. And that connected also. This is the other thing about the women artists is that they're finding uh, matriarchal connections as they travel.
Yes,
Isn't
yes.
that true?
And her, her ancestry is here in Hawaii. So she was able to really look at that a lot closer. And she lived here, she practically grew up here. I don't think it was 100% of the time, but it really, I shouldn't be talking for her, but what I could see in her work is that the tether that you have with the history and legacy of where you come from um, is strong, and she was able to strengthen that. If you just see it as
Mm.
like a cord that you're attached to, whether you want to be or not, it is there, and so she got to strengthen that through art, and she's very prolific, and she has been again another one of our artists on such a great trajectory. And by the way, I don't mean great as always in creating massive amount of artwork. I mean great in that you are able to find inspiration and bring it out in artwork when you feel like you're ready for it. I feel like a lot of artists force themselves, and that's so
Mhm.
hard to do. And Allison
Yeah.
Allison works on a very intuitive level. I think a lot of our artists do. They're very
Mm.
intuitive.
I agree. I agree. Um, Leah Newsom is one of the latest artists that we interview, and she's a writer and an author. And her story of becoming a writer and author, and again, she's from Arizona, but Central Arizona, going over to Hawaii, and she was like, "This is pretty lush, man. I'm into this," you know. But she was so much fun to just talk about the craft of the writing, and she loved that she had this, month in Hawaii. She's like, "Are you kidding me? This is a dream come true." Yeah, a lot of people have said that recently about how it really is an amazing thing. But I didn't want to close today's show off without talking about Rose B. Simpson, who is an incredible artist that went to Aztec ruins in Chaco Canyon, and she's just she's prolific, but like intense with her art. It's
She is so cool. Do you remember what happened when we rented the RV? So she was at two parks. She was at Chaco Culture National Historical Park, and she was at Aztec Ruin.
Aztec. Yeah.
And so for Aztec, we had some money back then, and so we rented a really nice brand new RV, and we were so excited to show it to her, and and I wasn't thinking, and I think I told you this, the newness of this RV, like the plastic was still on it, like it was off-gassing. So
Oh,
yeah, and she had a new baby, and you know what she did herself with no complaint. I mean, yes, we can talk about her art, but this is the kind of person she is. This is her strong, wonderful character. This is how easy she makes people's lives. She borrowed one of her family's RVs and arranged everything and had it transported to Aztec, and she didn't even tell us she was doing it. She set the whole thing up herself. We felt really bad, but man, she solved a problem like that, and
wow.
she knew that we'd invested a good amount into getting her the fancy thing, but it was still the wrong thing. So
Wow.
she helped us out so hugely. And by the way, her child was the youngest national park artist in residence to date.
I love that. I love that. I love that. Man, just going over all these women and ladies, if we left you out, please, it's almost impossible. So many interviews. That even putting this retrospective together, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm making sure, because there's just a lot of artists over 8 years doing monthly shows. Think
I
about
mean,
that.
I apologize to everybody too. I mean, we're trying to remember over 300 artists and more than a decade of artists, and it is just really hard. So if you don't hear from us, drop us a line. We
Yeah,
we
please.
just don't
Yeah.
have a large staff to say hi all the time and to tell us how you're doing. And
Yeah. And
we just
those out there that want to support the national parks programs and park programs, state parks, county parks and art programs, go to nationalparksartsfoundation.org. They will accept donations. I know that, right, Tanya?
yes, and email info@nationalparksartsfoundation.org too. Even if you just
Awesome.
want to drop us a line and say, hey, look what I've done. Look at my exhibition. Because
Yeah.
we do follow our artists as much as we can, but there's just so many now. I feel so bad. I want to be friends with all of them, but
I
like
know. Every time they're on shows, I'm like, I want to hang out with you. Like, can we I want to hang out. Like, you guys are so cool, guys and girls. Okay, women. Really, the arts that have come through are incredible. Tanya, thank you so much for being back on the show. We'll be back next month with Tanya again, and our retrospective will be ready for National Parks Week, which goes from April 19th through 27th. And we want to support our parks as best we can. Sometimes it's viewing the parks through arts at a distance, right? Reading about parks and learning some of the history. And yes, going to parks. And I will say, go to our parks, be mindful, pack it in, pack it out as best we can. So thank you so much, Tanya. Everyone, nationalparksartsfoundation.org. Talk with you all next month.
thank you, everybody. Bye now.
Thank you for joining us here on Big Blend Radio's first Friday Toast to the Arts and Parks show with the National Parks Arts Foundation. Learn more about their amazing park artist residency programs. Go to nationalparksartsfoundation.org. Keep up with our shows at bigblendradio.com.